For this week's assignment, we're going to use an idea called clipping masks and photographs to create an image that's made out of a word with a different picture in each letter. So the first thing we're going to need to do is start by creating our document. We're going to go File, New, and again this week we're going to choose a landscape. This is a photo preset, landscape 5 by 7. We're going to want to make a white background and work in RGB at 300 pixels per inch. This image would be an image that was suitable to be printed commercially, either for example on a business card or a postcard, or taken to a photo lab to be printed as well. I'm going to go ahead and click OK to make our new document. We'll give Photoshop a second to set that up. The first thing I'm going to do in this document is I'm actually going to get my text tool. The text tool is one of the few tools that I don't recommend hotkeys for, because as soon as you have selected the text tool, all of the hotkeys stop working. At this point, if you were to type something with a hotkey, you would actually just enter more text into your text box. So I've decided that I'm going to use the city of Paris, which is somewhere I've always wanted to go for this demonstration, and so I'm going to type the word Paris. Now in this case you can't see it because my text color is white. So I'm going to click on the text color and drag it down to black. For this assignment, it actually does not matter what color your text is, because ultimately we're going to fill in this text with photographs. And I'm going to go ahead and click my checkmark button. Remember to always look for the checkmark button. In Photoshop, if you have a checkmark button hanging out up there, it won't allow you to do anything else until you either commit the changes, click the checkmark, or click the No, Don't Do It button. So the next thing I need to do is find the character panel. The character options panel lives under Window and Character, and that panel will pop up somewhere on your screen. It may come out of one of your sidebars. This panel allows me to resize text, and in this case I'm going to resize my text large and move it to the center of my page. And I actually found a typeface on a website called DaFont that I particularly like for this assignment. I like a big, bold typeface, and for this one I found one called Paris Metro that I thought would be a fun fit for this assignment. So I'm going to continue to make my type a little bit bigger. I've chosen Paris Retro. If I hold my cursor right in between the T's and this box, I can click and drag to the right to make my text bigger, or to the left to make it smaller. And when I have it just the size I want, I'm going to go ahead and close my text, my character dialog box. Next thing I'm going to do is get my Windows panel, or my Layers panel, I'm sorry, and that lives under Window and Layers. The hotkey is F7. Truthfully, I don't use it very often. And now I'm going to place my photographs. I already went to Morgue File and found an assortment of photos that I like that are of the city Paris. So I'm going to use File, Place, and here's the first one, the Arc de Triomphe. I'm going to go ahead and place that. And it's going to show up here in my Photoshop document. Notice there's that check mark again. The check mark will tell Photoshop, yes, go ahead and put that picture there. And I'm going to continue that process, File, Place, to put these next photos in as well. File, Place. I'm going to move this dialog box up a little bit so you can see the whole thing. Here's the Place button. File, Place, Eiffel Tower. No project about Paris is complete without a picture of the Eiffel Tower. And last but not least, the Louvre. So now I have in my Layers panel, I have my text that I cannot see, and I have all of these pictures that I have placed into my document. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the pictures off. And for this assignment, you're going to need one picture for each letter in your word. In this case, Paris has 5 letters, so I have 5 pictures. And I'm going to turn off all the visibility on all the layers except for the one directly above my text. Remember, I can rearrange these pictures by clicking and dragging on them. And in this case, I'm going to want the text to be at the very bottom, and then I'm going to place these photos over the top of the text. So I have the picture that is directly above my text selected. I know it's selected because the bar is highlighted. It's a different color than the rest of them. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the layer menu up at the top of Photoshop, and I'm going to choose Layer, Create Clipping Mask. When I choose this option, what's going to happen is Photoshop is going to treat the text like a cookie cutter, and it's going to combine the two pictures. The only places that the photograph will show up are the places that the word Paris exists. So I can move the word, or I can move the picture, and as long as those two items intersect, they will show up. So I think I want to put the Arc de Triomphe in my letter R, but I notice my picture is way too big. I'm going to come up to my menu bar and check the option called Show Transform Controls. When I do this, I get a bounding box around my picture, and I can just click and drag. If I hold the Shift key, it will keep the photo proportional, and that resizes my photograph. And I'm going to put it right there in my letter R. I'm going to need to make it a little bit bigger so it will catch the tail of the R. And there is, I think I'm going to try and get the sculpture right there and the texture, and there's the arc itself. And now I'm done. So I'm going to look for that check mark. There's my check mark. I'm going to tell Photoshop, okay, all done. And now I'm going to uncheck this box called Show Transform Controls, and when I do that, those will go away. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my lasso tool. In this case, I want the polygonal lasso tool. This tool makes a selection, allows you to just click points, much like the pen tool in Illustrator, and use it to make a selection. And now I'm going to come over to my layers panel, and at the bottom I'm going to add a layer mask. By adding a layer mask, it's going to hide the rest of the picture that's outside of the letter R. So I have my letter R done. I have 4 more letters I need to do. I'm going to turn the next picture on, but when I do that, it covers up my entire picture. This happens to be the ceiling of the Lafayette Mall in Paris. And I want to take this picture and pull it down into my clipping group here. And notice when I do that, it jumps over, it gets the same little arrow, and here's my base layer. I know it's the base layer because it's underlined and it's setting sturdy on its base. And so I'm again going to check my Show Transform Controls option, and in this case I think I want to move that over to the P. Ooh, although I get some interesting detail in the A, and I'm going to resize it a little bit. I'm holding down my Shift key and resizing that picture, that photo, until it's just right where I want it. I think I'm going to place it right there. Again, I'm going to come up here and check for the check mark, click the check mark, uncheck Show Transform Controls, and in this case I think there's enough space between my P and my A that I can use my marquee tool. This tool makes a selection as well, but it makes a rectangular selection. I'm going to click right there and then come over to my layers panel and add a layer mask. So now I have my P and my R both have images clipped This is called a clipping mask again, or a clipping group. And I have a P and the image in the P and the image in the R. My next picture is this quaint little shop. Reminds me of French gardens. And so I think I might put this one in the letter A. And I'm just going to drag this down into the clipping group. And as soon as I do that, it clips over into the other letters. But notice, because it's on top of my the ceiling of the Lafayette Mall, the letter that I'm using for the P, now something different shows up in the P. If I drag it below that, there's that image I had chosen for my P. So now I'm going to look at moving this around a little bit. I really like the hydrangeas. I think I might want to resize the image some. Again, I'm holding my Shift key to resize the picture. I'll come move it back over. Oh, I think I like that, just like that. I'm going to click the check mark. I'm going to uncheck the Show Transform Controls option. And I'm going to use my marquee tool. That eye has a nice straight line, so I can get in there pretty easily. And I'm going to put a layer mask on it. I'm going to continue this process with each image in my composition. This time I'm going to use Edit, Transform, Scale to get my transform controls. Notice those are the same transform controls. And I'm going to take the Eiffel Tower here, and I think I want to put it in the letter A. So there's my Eiffel Tower. Again, I'm looking for the check mark. And I'm going to use the polygonal lasso tool to make my selection. And I'm going to add a layer mask. And last but not least, I'm going to turn on the layer called the Louvre. And I'm going to drag it down into our clipping group. And I'm going to rearrange it, maybe resize it some. This time I used the hotkey, which is Control T, to get the transform tools. And I'm going to rearrange, there we go. And I'm going to check OK. And because this image is on the very bottom of the stack, I don't actually need a layer mask. But if it was anywhere else in the stack, it would hide the things beneath it. So because it's at the bottom, I'm okay. I'm going to do one more thing before I'm finished with this project, and that's I'm going to come down to the bottom of my layers panel, and I'm going to choose the button that says FX. This is going to bring up a list, and on the list is an option called Drop Shadow. This is going to bring up a whole great big dialog box, and this dialog box is called the Layer Style dialog box. And it gives me the options of adding a drop shadow to an image. Notice as I do this, we're getting a shadow down here. I can also add an inner shadow, so this is inside the letters. I need to actually click on the word in order to get the options in the box to make the changes. So here's the inner shadow. It's inside our text. I can add a bevel. This is something that makes my image look 3D. Notice I get kind of it looks puffy. I can change the color of my image. If I change this blending mode, I can make that red turn everything below it red. I can make it affect it more or less with the opacity. This is a fun panel to just play with. There's lots and lots of options. I can click in the color box to change the color. That's kind of an interesting effect by placing the purple at a very transparent purple over the top. The one I like the best though is drop shadow, and it's the one I think that we tend to use the very most. I can turn any of these options on or off without changing all their settings by simply checking the box next to their name. But the thing that can be frustrating for students is not realizing that you need to actually select the option in order to get all the settings to show up. So just because you've clicked the box doesn't mean that you're changing the same settings. So up here I have a drop shadow. I like a pretty dark drop shadow, and we'll make it kind of close. And then I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to save my file, and that's the end of this week's lesson. Thanks so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great day.